So my name is Gwen Jones. I'm 21. My mum used to joke that I was always scared of my own shadow. That was the type of child that I was. I used to play out in the street and we'd go to the park, and the big kids there would always just terrify me. It's quite interesting now when I look back on that because there was always this sort of fear of other people, I guess. My parents divorced when I was 2, so I was sort of mostly raised by my mum. I was very close to my grandparents, in particular my grandfather, who sort of ended up becoming a father figure. We were very close and we were just sort of best friends really growing up. He actually taught me how to swim. He was funny, he was patient, and always, always supportive as well. He passed away then when I was 16, which was very sudden. He was only 72, I think. And that was sort of the moment when I look back on it now where everything crumbled for me. I remember seeing about the Paris terrorist attacks in 2015. And in my head, I put two and two together. And I was like, well, all of this is happening now because my Tadki, my grandfather, he isn't here anymore. And it just escalated from that point, I guess, where my safe person had gone. I needed him to still guide me through certain areas. I had like A levels ahead of me, and it was just odd because I always thought he would be there. Those events gave fuel to this narrative that I had, that there wasn't much hope in the future and life was always going to be hard and negative, and bad things were going to keep happening. And I guess maybe that was when I started to feel nervous about going into school, because just having, walking down the corridors or sitting in the canteen area where there's lots of people would just make me feel anxious. I think I started to isolate myself a little bit then. And then about a year later, I started working at Marks and Spencer's. So it must have been my third Sunday that I was meant to work. And I just woke up and I was like, oh my God, I can't do it. So I went obviously crying to my mum and I said, I can't do it. She's like, right, I'll give you a lift in and you can do it. And my mum always taught me, whenever I sort of felt anxious about things, to take it one step at a time. So to focus on getting my shoes on, or putting my socks on before the shoes on, and then leaving the house and just taking it bit by bit like that, rather than seeing it as a huge overwhelming step. So she gave me a lift into town. I went upstairs at Marks and Spencer's to the staff changing rooms, and my heart was just going, racing really fast. And yeah, I don't really remember what happened in the next few moments, but I just know I ended up on the toilet floor just hyperventilating, feeling sort of at a loss, like I just couldn't cope with it anymore. And on the phone to my mum, crying and begging her to come pick me up. I guess the thoughts then were sort of telling me that I needed to get out of that situation, that I was in danger, even though I wasn't in danger, but at the time it was very real. And then physically, my body was just all sort of very tense and my breathing became very rapid, and my heart just felt like it was sort of beating out of my chest, I suppose. We had the discussion of, okay, I think it's time to go to the doctors. My mum came in with me because, again, just couldn't. I was 17, but I just couldn't face doing it on my own. And yeah, it was a half an hour spent crying and really talking about everything and trying to establish the best way that I could get help and get back on my feet a bit. So I was put on antidepressants, I was put on fluoxetine. After that, it was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do for the next year or so. University was off the cards because I just didn't really have anything in mind that I wanted to study. So I started working as a teaching assistant at a school, which was quite nice because it was nice hours. I had the weekends off. It was quite, like decent money at the time. And Yeah, I think there were parts within that where my mental health began to worsen again. My grandmother, who'd lost my grandfather, she had been going to a hypnotherapist and she'd found it really beneficial. And she suggested it to me and she said, I'll pay for it. So I started hypnotherapy, which was probably the best thing I ever did. I think it was about 8 weeks long. And what we used to do was we'd sort of focus on goals for the week. So one time, one of my goals was to start up a conversation with another teacher in the staff room. I found a notepad quite recently where I'd written down that I'd done it. And I think I asked them about half term or something like that. And it's funny because I remember that exact moment. I remember sitting there. I remember my heart was racing. And in my head, I was like battling. It wasn't a voice as such, but it was as if something was telling me, like, no, just don't risk it. Just stay silent. If somebody speaks to you, speak to them, but just don't embarrass yourself. And then I did it, and I felt so proud of myself for it. And being able to report that back to her was really important as well, because I knew that, she'd be happy for me, and I knew that it was helping me as well. It wasn't just a case of ticking a box and, impressing my hypnotherapist. It was actually, this was what I needed to do to start getting better. When I think back on them now, I feel like they were thoughts that were trying to protect me from things that I didn't need to be protected from. So, for example, that conversation, it was scary. And I think before I opened my mouth and started to speak, I was thinking, this is going to be so embarrassing. You're going to have to face this person for however long because you work with them. Those thoughts were trying to provide me with reasons why I shouldn't speak to this person. And then obviously when I did speak to them, it was fine. And obviously it didn't make those intrusive thoughts just disappear, but it started to provide them with evidence that actually I was safe, I was okay. An analogy I like to use is a train station analogy. You picture yourself stood on a train station platform and trains come in and they also depart, and then another train comes in, and the idea is, these trains are constantly coming in and then leaving the station, and another train will come in. And that is much like your thoughts aren't sort of factual, they aren't there to stay, they are temporary. And obviously that doesn't take away from the fact that sometimes they're really challenging and really hard, but the way you can use that train analogy is deciding, okay, am I gonna get on this train today, this train that's telling me that I'm not good enough? Or am I gonna just acknowledge that it's there, might even, wave hello to it, but I'll just let it leave the station when it wants to, and I'll get on that train that's telling me that I am good enough. This just helps sort of be more mindful of your thoughts and acknowledge that they're there, but that doesn't mean you have to give them any time. I think sometimes the worst thing you can do is ignore your thoughts, because that doesn't make them go away, and it's just can be quite draining. So acknowledge and accept them, but don't necessarily believe them. I think to get to that point, you have to sort of do the uncomfortable work with it, and getting help is so important and is probably the first step. I guess it's different for everybody, but whether it's going to the GP or whether it's speaking to a friend and just saying how you feel, I think that is the first thing, and just sort of normalizing what you're experiencing, how you're feeling, the thoughts that are going through your head. And then I think for me, the biggest sort of help has been pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Is hard in that moment in time, but I know that I'll come away from it either feeling better or knowing that I've overcome a small hurdle. So for somebody with anxiety, then going out the door and going on a walk, that might be really daunting. And so the way you can sort of tackle that is, you think, okay, well, I'm going to get dressed, I'm going to put my shoes on. We'll see, how we feel then. I'm going to try and get out the door. If I do, great. If I'm not feeling so great about it, I don't have to go on a long walk. I can just, 5 minutes around the block or whatever. It's just about like listening to your needs and what's going to help you. I think everybody is completely different on what works and what doesn't work for them, especially when you're experiencing a mental illness. You often don't like yourself. You don't really have a good relationship with yourself. A lot of the time, you feel worthless. You're battling these really hard thoughts in your head. And it is hard to have a good relationship with yourself because you don't feel like you're worthy of receiving that from yourself. So I think self-like is the first step to start appreciating yourself, to start noting the things that are good about you, and not even why you deserve to be here, because everybody deserves to be here, but the things that make you good, maybe how you can help other people. And there's obviously a fine line between pleasing others to make yourself feel good and constantly chasing that need to please others, or helping others and feeling good because you've helped others. I started my own blog in the December of 2017. That was to talk about mental health and to just provide that space for other people to feel like they weren't on their own. For a while, for me, that was what used to make me feel good and gave me a good focus, was knowing that I was helping other people. After that, I started to slowly sort of look inwards and look at how I could help myself and start looking after myself. Often you'll find that people who've overcome adversity or really challenging situations, they've almost had like a turning point where they've decided to use something from that experience to create a network to support other people, or a business, or, a sort of campaign. And yeah, it's just important to me, I think, to highlight those things. There's always a learning experience from dark periods of your life, and maybe coming out of that tunnel is realizing, oh, okay, that's why I had to go through that to get to this point, and this is how I'm gonna use all of that to help other people or to make a difference in the world somehow. Writing has really helped me, whether it's journaling, which I do a lot of. That helps me to just rationalize things going on. I find it sort of quite easy to get overwhelmed, but then equally I can bring that back down by journaling and actually looking at what's concerning me and why I don't need to be worried. And then writing an article or a blog post, I just find it is like a bit of an escapism, is something to focus on, particularly when telling somebody else's story. I find that quite interesting, and again, that pretty feeds into the idea of helping somebody else. Is looking at it and thinking, how can I write this story how they want it to be told, and that's gonna benefit them or make them happy, I guess. Whenever I feel happy or excited, or whenever I feel worried, no matter wherever I am there, writing always helps. Probably the best way for me to convey how I'm feeling. And particularly when I'm excited or proud of something, I really like writing it down because I feel like I'm keeping that memory for me to look back on, particularly if I ever have moments of doubt. So, with social anxiety, the way I sort of see it, it doesn't control me anymore, but I think that there is a little bit of it that clings to me, and in a weird sort of way, I think it sort of sits there and tries to protect me from things that it's scared of. Now is sort of my role to reassure it that it doesn't need to be scared, that, we're okay, we're safe. I think feeling uncertain or uncomfortable is good because that's where a lot of growth happens. And just because you're nervous before a podcast, that's completely normal. You're not going to die. You're going to be okay.